for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. SheHH.
Hi guys, welcome back to the SheHH podcast, where we interview women in Christian music all around the world. In today's episode, we are bringing you the best of the best from the last 5 episodes of this season. We've spoken to 5 amazing artists, and in this episode, we bring you some of the must-see bits. Make sure to check out the full episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts on and on YouTube, and make sure to share with a friend. You can follow us on Instagram at SheHH Podcast. So just kind of playing on the fact that you're UK gospel artists, a lot of people that sing in church and, have a nice voice and maybe sing in the choir, lead praise and worship, then go on to be a gospel singer or gospel artist. They just assume that that's the next progression in the whole thing. So whereas you've kind of like mentioned in your bio and just about yourself that you believe that you were called into it. And so we kind of want to just ask, what are the signs that God gave you and you were called into this ministry?
Definitely. It's a good question. I mean, I think it's always very good to be transparent and open about the journey. As you said, some people just think 1 + 1 = 2 and that's it. But there's definitely a journey. And I think it's so nice that each one of us, each worship leader, we all have a different story to tell. And that story will resonate with someone somewhere. But I think for me specifically, I grew up in church. I've led the youth choir in church, and I think just being in roles like that definitely gave me skills. It definitely helped me to understand how to appreciate people, to not take people for granted. It taught me so much. And I think one main thing that I will say is, in terms of service, like service is so important. And I think I've come to realize that when you've been given that opportunity to serve, and then you then go on the flip side and people are serving you, I mean, it will definitely put you in that humble spot, because you know how it is to be treated on the other side. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, my journey has gone through singing in church, leading choirs, as I've said, to being a backing vocalist for worship ministers. And again, I think it's just always that privilege of seeing how things have been done. So I would say that was almost like a training ground for me. So it's like, I'm not just going to send you out there. And I'm just immediately reminded of David. He had his training period, before he could kill Goliath, he was there in the field. He could kill a lion, he could kill a bear. But yeah, definitely, I would say we should not forsake the training grounds. So that's what I would say.
Amazing. And in that journey that you were going through it, did you ever have a point where you mentally noticed that this is God telling me one day I'm going to be doing this as a career or as a ministry to pursue? Did you ever have moments like that?
Do you know what? Like from the age of 10, I knew, or even before, I knew that I loved singing so much. Like, I always share this story that my mum bought me this creative box, and it had like colorful paper, and I was really into arts and craft and all that. And I remember specifically using those colored pieces of papers to like write songs. And I've shared this on my Instagram as well, and on my YouTube, that I actually put together like a leaflet, so to speak, and on the front of it, it said "My Dream," and I actually like wrote down a list of songs, what I want on my CD, and that was from the age of 10. And I always say, like, we should never be shy of writing the vision. And it's just so nice that even though I was young and I wrote it down, I wasn't knowing that I was actually doing something. Do you know what I mean? Like almost speaking into my future. So when I look back, I'm like, this has actually been since I was like really young. And I think
yesterday.
And literally on the journey, I feel like God has spoken to me in different ways. He's spoken to me through dreams, through just, if I do go and minister, I just see what God does and what takes place, when the Holy Spirit is present. And I'm like, why wouldn't I want to walk on this path, knowing that people are being blessed by it, people's lives are being touched by this. Like, this is a ministry. So yeah, I think definitely God has shown me in different ways that this is the path that he wants me to walk on. Because trust me, there was a moment in time that I was like, gospel music, mainstream, like, which one should I do?
Do you think that churches play enough of a role in developing Christian music artists of tomorrow, or is there more they could do? What would have helped you, do you think?
I definitely think that they don't play enough of a role in that development. I feel like a lot of the times, not my church, but I have had a few people in my church that have left my church that were like this, but they think it's like a bad thing to do. Like, they think it's like worldly and awful and like sinful. And I don't really like, it's a job. I'm not singing about, like, I sing about God most of the time. Like, I just feel like if they had the mindset more like, we're sending you out onto the mission fields to go sing, like, and we're backing you to do that, and they looked at it as more of like a mission, because it is. Like, I'm gonna have a platform that not a lot of them are gonna be able to have. A lot of artists they're going to be able to speak to people that would never step foot into a church, but they would listen to someone's song. And I feel like if they had more of that mindset, it would definitely help. I feel like a lot of artists end up starting in church and then leaving church because of that. And it's really sad, honestly, because clearly that's just people being stupid. That's not God's fault. Like, God's heart is for us to be doing that. I definitely think the church should play a bigger role in helping grow like Christian artists, because like the world has so many of them. Like, we need to take back the culture for real. Like, we need to be out there and our voices be louder than all the garbage that people listen to on the radio, honestly.
True, no, and this might be a bit like like a spotlight on you, and you might be like, whoa, haven't thought about it. But what are the practicalities of what the church can do? Because I think beyond forcing singers to like sing and lead worship, and trust me, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But what else can they do? How can they develop that talent and develop those people?
I feel like prayer and support goes a long way. Like, more than money, more than like, oh, we're going to have a huge concert at our church that you're going to lead. Like, more than that stuff, which is just honestly like not necessary in my opinion. I think that the support of them being like, we believe in you and we believe that God has put this like gift on you, that they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. Like, that will, like, that's why God says we need brothers and sisters in Christ to like encourage us. You can't just be alone, all the time. And prayer, like, prayer is so powerful, and we forget that so often. But I forget which preacher it was, but this one preacher, he would never go and preach without this guy who was praying. He would go in before, like a few hours before, and he would have a bunch of people from the church come and pray with him and that's what started a huge revival, like 40, 60, way more than 40 years ago. But I always thought that was so powerful, because imagine, like, I've always had this image of, if I ever, like, when I start touring, to be able to go early to the venues and like pray over like the arena, because like there's so many lives that walk into the arena. You don't know like what they've been through, but just for the church to be able to do something like that, like, if I had, well, I have a lot of people backing me, but like most artists, they don't have like a church that would do that would gather and like pray for like their ministry.
And even just speaking more about the music, because obviously this is a music podcast. You guys are the first Brazilian-based group or artist that we have had on the podcast. You sing a lot in Portuguese, obviously, because that's the national language, which is amazing, as well as some of the English songs. So I know First of All was in English, which I was like, okay, finally I can actually understand what they're What was it like just being able to be bilingual on your songs? And do you specifically think that you target the Portuguese speaking community, Christian community, or are you trying to get everyone in the world? Like, is your audience broad?
We got to record that song first of all, and it is not the first song in English that we wrote. We actually started writing songs in English from the very beginning. From the very first song that we wrote, we were trying to write in English as well. We were learning English, and at the same time, we were trying to write something.
Oh.
The first drafts weren't really good.
Yeah.
but as we got better with our English, the songs got a little better, I think.
And it's funny that there are songs in English that we can actually translate to Portuguese. Like, we don't feel comfortable translating. So
that's the downside.
Yeah.
We tried to write the songs in Portuguese and English, and they just simply don't work.
Yeah, sometimes it's going to be dependent on how the language sounds and translates and the phrase in the language. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And we do translate a couple of songs for other people. We had some artists come to us and we translated their songs. But when it comes to our songs, that becomes a little bit harder for some reason.
It's weird.
But first of all, we wrote that song. It was a really awesome project that we got the chance to be a part of. And the song, we sat one day to write with each other. It just appeared.
Yeah.
It was really natural, like a really awesome creative process that we got there. And the response from people was really awesome. We had friends from America that were trying to understand what we were singing in Portuguese. And they said, finally a song I understand and that I can sing to. But as for the public, I think we always had like both people coming to us to listen to our stuff
since the beginning. Even because like after we came back from America, the people that we met there were really involved with our music too. So we always got the support from both like international English speaking people and Brazilians. And the fun thing is that the public here in Brazil that listens to this kind of style or independent music, they're very drawn to listen to American or international music. And I don't know if it is because of the lack of bands
here,
or maybe because the bands that exist here in Brazil aren't really known. Like they're not in the stream, they're not being shared enough, maybe. So yeah, and most of the public from Brazil listens to international music. So releasing music in English, we're also reaching the public from Brazil, which is funny because we speak Portuguese.
Usually people here say, oh, there aren't enough artists from Brazil, so we're gonna search outside.
Yeah, we have even been doing a work here in Brazil, kind of like helping other artists from Brazil to feel encouraged to make music as well. Because since we have as I mentioned before, we have this you have to be under a label, you have to record a specific type of music with a really good producer. Since we have all of that, sometimes people here in Brazil don't feel really encouraged to release music by their own, or they feel like the quality of the music's not as good, or they're not used to produce by themselves. So we're kind of like trying to be
trying to encourage each
other, here in Brazil. But the public for us, it's just like it's kind of,
I wouldn't say it's 50-50, but it's pretty close.
Oh, that's cool.
It's funny. I did an interview, so this interview is like it's gotten me so many other interviews. I'm like, really? Like it was this guy from the UK who hit me up one day. We just chatted, and he did this write up, and he got a lot of things wrong, but he got like some juicy stuff in there, you know. So people reach out to me, and they're like, "We heard you were a Satanist," and I'm like, well, I mean, listen, if that's gonna help me get the gospel to you, we'll make sure you get the gospel. But no, so I was gonna sell my soul for money, and I was gonna sign a deal with a major label through a distributor, slash quote unquote artist developer who was actually just a brainwasher, handler, who was, you know, in the business and is still in the business of just taking artists who have talent and just brainwashing them so that they can be in line with the agenda, that a lot of mainstream media has. And so, you know, it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's just the world we're in. Money is power, and so a lot of people with a lot of money have a lot of power, and so that's it doesn't need to be this kind of mystical, like, there's so many conspiracy theories, which is actually a term that was coined to kind of devalue the truth of those very theories that are very much true. But yeah, that's another podcast actually. But 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 yeah, so I had that encounter, and it was life changing. It's actually the reason why I became a Christian. Um,
Ooh,
yeah,
wow.
so that was the reason why. So when I went into that space and I encountered the quote unquote pleasures of living on the other side or working for the other kingdom, because there are two kingdoms, a kingdom of light and a kingdom of darkness. And so they're literally like working simultaneously, in parallel, to one another. And so a lot of people, they're not seeing like what's happening in the spirit. They're thinking it's just like, oh, I get up, I get ready, I go to work, and it's just this kind of robotic, senseless, sheep-like deep state. I'm dropping some code words. But but yeah, like once you wake up out of that slumber, you can see the both happening and working at once. And so for me, what snapped me out of that deep state of sleep was just being in the room and having the deal in front of me. And it sucks that I had to go all the way there, but then again, being the personality God gave me, just being kind of like the go-getter, like a little rebellious kind of, just, I guess, courageous, I don't take no for an answer person that I am. I actually made it to that room, and it was kind of cool, but also really scary, just to see how evil, is actually a thing, and there are people who have given themselves over to it and are willingly working in collaboration with it. That woke me up real quick, and I realized that the God that I was taught as a child was actually real. Um, because the way that my mind works is, well, if there's darkness, then there must be light. And so if there's evil, then there must be good. Like, we live in it's a dual world. There's a duality to the world. And so I had been engaged into some like new agey stuff, and just a bunch of other kind of crystals, and just like trying to find how to channel whatever I needed to channel to to get whatever I needed for myself, and in that moment it was like it just all made sense. Like, there's only one door. There's like there are a lot of walls, but there's only one door. And so
One way, yeah.
one way. And so I had this encounter, and I said, I was able to say no, and kind of just miraculously was able to leave that space without being harmed too much. I was harmed more mentally and emotionally because of just the mind control aspect of it, but not so much physically. Um, and then I just went back to my hotel, and I was like, God, if you're real, like, I want to know who you are. And I also was like, yo, like, I'm gonna die out here. Like, I'm by myself in LA. I was in LA, doing this. And so I had flown across the country, and then I went back home, right after that happened, it was like the next day my flight went back home, and I remember arriving at the airport, and my ex-girlfriend at the time, I was in a domestic partnership for a few years, she was like, something's wrong with you. She just knew like something had happened to me, and just the look in my face, and I was very out of it. And just, I mean, some of the things I saw in the room were very things I wouldn't even put on the record right now, because they're just very, I'll tell you them when I visit you in the UK.
Yeah.
But yeah, but like just things that were just scary, and like almost like you wonder if it was real what you saw.
So I'm excited for this next question because it's basically why we do SheHH. But as a woman who, like you were saying, you are kind of known a lot in the CHH Christian hip hop space, as well as some of the like pop related kind of stuff you've done. Because I was going through the like years of albums, and it's like, wow, V has really done it all. Yeah. So yeah, what's it like being in certain spaces that are very male dominated and hearing stuff like, oh, she raps good for a girl and stuff like that? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, I don't really get offended by stuff like that. I guess because I grew up with boys. It's funny because I always tell this story. When I first put my first album out with Flame, it was like my first industry album, professionally produced and put out and all that. And I remember I was getting a lot of tweets from guys that would say like, man, I don't care what anybody says. I love V.Rose music's album and I love her music. And I'm like, why did they keep saying I don't care what anybody says? Like,
That's a backwards compliment.
I promise I did not even get it. And like my album cover is bright pink, that first album. It just like did not occur to me at all because I never looked at myself like, well, I'm just a female artist, you know? And women don't do that. We don't look at ourselves like, well, I'm just a woman, you know? That's something that I feel like people project onto us. But I've never looked at myself that way. Like, well, I'm just a woman in a mill. Like, I just feel like I'm one of the people in this industry, you know? And so I view myself that way. Like, I'm equal to you and you're equal to me. I don't look at you like, yeah, you're good for a male rapper. You're good for a male MC. Like, imagine me saying that. That would feel so weird. And so I just never had that. I never had that stigma. And like, I also experienced men come along and really help me. So Flame signed me and was, you know, literally changed my life, just putting me on Surrender. And all of a sudden, like, so many people were like, who is V.Rose? You know, and I was just from this small town in Sacramento. So, you know, I experienced a lot of help in that way. It is a male dominated industry, but I know that as like women, as we begin to just continue to like remind ourselves, like, we don't have to carry that I'm just a female artist thing, you know? I don't have to own that. I don't have to take that. I don't have to mention that. I don't have to even think about that. Like, you see that starting to happen, and women are like really stepping up. Like, you see Wande just coming out and like working so hard and just like putting out content and just like living your best life, you know? Like, I'm not worried about what people may think or say. I'm just being me. I'm just being who God called me to be and just doing that. And like, that's literally what my mindset has always been. And so I just always was like, well, eventually I saw it change from I don't care what anybody says, you know, because coming out as a new artist is hard. You get a lot of people who will hate on you because that maybe they're intimidated, or maybe they don't respect you yet because you don't have any weight under your belt, you know, whatever. And like, then as I started to release more and more albums, I really started to see the respect change and people stopped saying stuff like that. And it sucks that it's like that way, but it is what it is. You can't let it stop you. You know, you just have to keep going.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, make sure to leave a like rating wherever you're listening to this and to follow us on Instagram at SheHH Podcast.